There is a hollow in western North Carolina where the ground is still full of stumps that nothing ever finished rotting.
Chestnut stumps. American chestnut, the tree that once made up 1 out of every 4 hardwoods on some of these slopes. In 1904, a man named Herman Merkel, working at the New York Zoological Park, noticed a blight killing the chestnuts on the grounds. That fungus came in on imported nursery stock, and over the next 30-odd years it walked south down this mountain chain and killed something on the order of 3 to 4 billion trees.
Now here is the part nobody tells you. Those trees were how a mountain family fed itself meat. You did not buy feed.
You turned your hogs out in the fall. The chestnut massed on the ground fattened them for free, and in December you brought them in hard and heavy and had a year of eating. The blight took that away from every ridge from Pennsylvania to Georgia inside 1 generation, and the families up in here did not go hungry, not 1 winter of it, because the tree was never the thing keeping the meat, the smokehouse was. They moved the hogs to corn and kept right on eating, and the skill in that little windowless building behind the house carried them through a disaster that erased a quarter of the forest.
Understand that before we go 1 sentence further, friend. The meat did not keep because of luck,
or cold weather, or because things were simpler then. It kept because of a method, 7 decisions in a specific order, and here is the twist. When those hams did fail, and they failed on plenty of porches, the family almost always blamed the wrong thing. A bad hog, a warm spell, the salt. It was almost never any of those. The myth that ruined more mountain meat than any warm winter ever did is this one. If there is salt on the outside, the meat on the inside is safe. That is wrong, and it is wrong in a way you cannot see and will not find out about until March, when you cut into a 40-day ham and it is sour at the bone while the outside still looks like money.
The thing that beat those families has a name: salt travel.
The cure moves through solid muscle at roughly 1 inch a week, and it has to reach the hip joint before spoilage bacteria already living deep in that meat get a running start. That is a race. Your great-grandmother knew she was running it. Most people who try this today do not know there is a race on. So let me ask you something plain. If the power in your county quit tonight and stayed quit until spring, and you had 150 pounds of pork on the table, could you keep it? Not freeze it, keep it. 2 generations ago, near every household on this ridge could have done it half asleep. Almost nobody can now. 7 pieces, in the order they happen. 6 you can find in a library if you dig. The 7th stopped getting taught, and it cost families their hams in the spring after doing everything else right. We are building to it.
Stay with me. I am Solomon Mercer, 7th generation on this ridge in the southern Appalachians.
My people came in through the gaps in the 1790s and never found a reason to leave, and my grandfather Elias made me copy what he knew into a journal before he went. This is me keeping that promise. And I will tell you honestly, none of this got forgotten because it quit working, and it never got outlawed either. What happened is duller and stranger than a law. In 1936, Congress passed the Rural Electrification Act, and the wire came up the hollows. Then came something you have probably never heard of: frozen food locker plants. Little community freezer buildings in small towns where you rented a locked box in a walk-in freezer for a few dollars a year. By 1950, there were about 11,600 of them operating in this country, most in towns of 5,000 people or fewer, and the Department of Agriculture counted them every year.
Not a raid. A rented box in town. Then home freezers got cheap and killed the locker plants too.
And by the mid-1960s, the count was down near 7,000, while 13 or 14 million home freezers hummed in American kitchens instead. 2 generations, 2 changes, and a skill that crossed an ocean quietly stopped being handed down. Nobody profited by making sure you forgot. Somebody profited because you did. That is not a conspiracy, neighbor. That is how markets eat a household skill. So before we start, tap subscribe. Not for me, Because we drag one of these buried skills back into daylight every week, and you are going to want the next one, 7 pieces, in order. Miss one of the first 6 and you lose the meat. Miss the 7th and you lose more than that. Piece 1. The weather. This whole skill starts before anybody picks up a knife, and it starts with a thermometer on the porch. Picture a December morning up here. Frost standing on the grass like fur. Breath fogging. A kettle heating over a fire in the yard. A wooden barrel tipped beside it. Hog Killing Day was a community event in these mountains. Neighbors trading labor house to house, kids kept home from school for it, and it happened when it happened for one reason: cold. The old rule was the first hard cold snap after Thanksgiving, and the modern number backs it exactly. You want daytime air in the range of 28 to 40 degrees, below freezing hard, and the meat freezes before the salt can move into it, and frozen meat takes no cure at all. Above 50 and bacteria in unsalted meat multiply faster than you can work. The government's own bulletin on this, Farmer's Bulletin 9/1/3, Killing Hogs and Curing Pork, written by F. G. Ashbrook and G. A. Anthony and published in 1917, told American farmers the same thing your great-grandmother would have said: cure in cold, dry weather. That bulletin was replaced by number 186 and later by 2265, and every one of them kept the temperature rule. Because the rule is not folklore. It is the growth curve of bacteria. And here is the part beginners skip. The carcass has to chill all the way through before you cut it, not the surface, to the bone, overnight at minimum, until it has stopped giving off heat and the fat is firm under your thumb. Cut a warm carcass and pack it in salt, and you have sealed body heat inside a salt pack, and that warm center is where everything goes wrong. Cold air, full chill overnight, then the knife. The failure here is impatience in the wrong month. People try this in October because they have a hog and a free Saturday, and October is warm in the afternoon even when the morning bites. Your calendar is your first tool, friend, and it is free. Here is your this week. Look up your county's average first hard freeze date and write it on the wall calendar. That is the day this work begins, and no earlier. Next piece is the cut, and there is one mistake near everybody makes on their first hog that throws away the best eating on the animal. It is not the ham. Piece 2, the cut. Your great-grandfather did not cut like a grocery store. A grocery store cuts for a display case. He cut for a building with no electricity in it, and every piece went where it went for a reason. The hams come off the hindquarters whole, bone in, trimmed square. Those get the longest cure, and they are the crown of the year. The shoulders come off next, and in these mountains they were either cured like small hams or ground for sausage. The sides, the belly, what the old people here called Midland meat, come off in rectangular slabs with the rind left on. The jowl gets squared and cured like a small piece of bacon. The fat back and leaf fat get cut clean and set aside, because that is your lard, and lard is not a byproduct up here, it is a preservation system of its own. The trimmings become sausage, and here is where people go wrong. Beginners want to cure the pretty cuts, the tenderloin, the loin chops. Do not. Lean muscle cures unevenly, dries hard, and takes salt in a way that never comes back right. In every Appalachian account of Hog Killing Day you find the same division. The tenderloin got eaten fresh that night with biscuits. The backbone and ribs went fresh or into jars. The hams, shoulders, and middlings went in the salt. That is not sentiment. That is chemistry. Fat carries the cure and holds moisture over months. Lean does not. Cure the fat cuts. Eat the lean ones this week. Joseph Dabney's 1998 book Smokehouse Ham, Spoon Bread and Scuppernong Wine documented that division from interviews across these mountains, and the Foxfire Project out of Rabun Gap, Georgia, which began as a high school magazine in 1966, recorded the same pattern from people who had done it their whole lives. Different hollows, same cuts, same order. This week, if you want to practice on something small, buy a pork belly, not a loin, belly. 3 to 5 pounds. That is the training wheel, and we will come back to it at the end. Now the salt. Which salt, how much, and the number that people get wrong more than any other number in this whole skill. Piece 3. The salt. This is where the work actually gets done, and I want to be very plain here because this is the piece where guessing hurts you. Use coarse, non-iodized salt, plain canning salt, pickling salt, kosher salt, or stock salt. Iodized table salt carries additives that discolor cured meat and turn the flavor bitter, and the anti-caking agents cloud a brine. 2 ways it was done, and both are still done. Dry cure, where the mix goes on the meat and the meat's own moisture pulls it in. Brine cure, where the meat goes under salt water in a crock and stays there. Mountain families ran both. The dry cure made the hams. The brine crock held the small stuff for months. The mix itself, in the federal bulletins, runs about 8 parts salt to 2 parts sugar by weight per 100 pounds of meat, plus a measured cure salt if you are holding that meat long or cold smoking it. Brown sugar takes the harsh edge off. Black pepper on the surface, and you apply it by weight, not by feel. Roughly 1 to 1¼ ounces of the mix per pound for a cut under 20 pounds, and closer to 1.5 ounces per pound above that. Weigh the meat, weigh the cure. That is the difference between a ham and a loss. Now the 2 things almost nobody tells you. First, you do not dump the whole cure on at once. The extension guidance splits it in thirds. 1/3 the day you cut, the second around day 5, the last around day 10. The surface can only take up so much at a time, and the rest runs off with the drip. 3 rubbings gets salt into muscle instead of onto the floor. Second, and this is the one that saves the ham, you open the hock end with your fingers and force cure directly into the joint. 3 tablespoons, pushed in against the bone. The extension bulletins out of Missouri say it in almost those words, and the reason is the race I told you about at the start. Salt entering the outside has to travel 4 or 5 inches to reach that hip joint. Bacteria at the joint do not travel at all. They are already there. So you cheat. You put the salt where the danger is on day 1. For brine, the old test was a raw egg floated in the crock, and if it rode with a quarter's worth of shell above the surface, she called it right. That test works, but a $2 scale is more honest than an egg. Weigh your salt and your water and write the number down. Your great-grandmother did that by feel after 40 years. You do not have 40 years. The failure mode here is patchy application. You rub the outside. It looks white and beautiful, and you never touch the crease behind the shank or the pocket under the shoulder blade. Miss a square inch and that square inch spoils, and it takes the meat around it with it. Rub every inch, especially the ugly ones. First ham I ever salted on my own, I was 13. Elias stood there with his arms folded and watched me do the whole thing and said nothing. I did a beautiful job on the outside. I never opened the hock. Late March we brought that ham down. He handed me the trier and told me to smell it myself, and I have not forgotten what came off that bone. He did not raise his voice. He said, "Now you know something you will not have to learn twice. This weekend, buy 5 pounds of coarse non-iodized salt and a kitchen scale that reads in grams. That is the entire entry fee, under $20. Pattern break, neighbor." Everything to this point your great-grandmother could have shown you in one cold afternoon. The next 3 pieces are where the real losses happened. Piece 4 has the calendar in it. Piece 5 is a tool you have never held. And piece 6 is the one that stopped getting taught at all. Piece 4, the box and the time. Now the meat sits, somewhere specific, for a length of time you calculate instead of guess. The container in an Appalachian smokehouse was usually a wooden box or a hollowed log, and near every family I have talked to calls it the same thing, the salt box. Hams and shoulders and middlings buried in salt, often right in the smokehouse, sometimes on a screened back porch. Wood or stone, never bare iron, aluminum or copper, because salt brine and reactive metal give you off flavors and metal in your food. Today, use a food-grade plastic tub, a glass or stoneware crock, or stainless. Now the temperature, and this is not a suggestion, the cure holds between roughly 32 and 40 degrees the whole time, and the federal regulation on dry curing says the meat should not drop below 36 degrees during the equalization period. Below freezing, the cure stalls. Above 50, the bacteria are winning. A basement corner, a spring house, an unheated cellar, or in modern terms, a second refrigerator. Now the arithmetic that separates people who keep meat from people who lose it. For dry cured whole cuts, you count 7 days per inch of thickness. Measure the thickest part of that ham. 5 inches thick means 35 days in the cure. Bellies run the same rule, 7 days per inch, which is why a 2-inch belly is done in about 2 weeks. By weight, the country ham rule is about 2.5 to 3 days per pound of fresh weight, so a 20-pound ham is looking at 50 to 60 days. And if the meat freezes during the cure, you add a day for every day it was frozen, because a frozen ham is a ham that is not curing. Turn the pieces, rotate top to bottom, keep it dark and keep it cold. The mistake here is treating time as a suggestion. People pull a ham at 3 weeks because the outside looks cured and smells wonderful. The outside is cured. The center is raw meat that has sat at 40 degrees for 3 weeks. There is a real, measurable sign at the end of this. A properly dry cured ham loses weight. The Department of Agriculture's own food safety guidance says dry curing pulls out enough moisture to drop a ham by at least 18%. And typically 20 to 25. That is your proof. Weigh the ham the day you salt it, write it on a tag, tie the tag to the shank. When it has given up a fifth of itself, the cure has done its work. A scale and a paper tag beat every gadget sold for this purpose. This week, walk your house and find your steady cold corner. Put a cheap thermometer in it and watch it 3 days. Every homestead in this country had that corner. Yours has one too. You just have not named it yet. Now, how did she know it was done inside without cutting it open and ruining it? There is a tool for that, and I would bet money you have never seen one. Piece 5, the trier. Here is the problem in one sentence. A cured ham cannot be opened to be checked because opening it is the same as ruining it. So how do you know? You use a trier, also called a ham tester, or in older mountain households a whittled hickory skewer, and in a modern ham house a thin length of stainless steel with a groove in it. You push it into the ham along the bone, right into the joint. You pull it straight out and you smell it. That is the whole test, and it is still how country hams are graded in Kentucky, Tennessee, and Virginia by people who can call a ham in 2 seconds. What you want is clean, sweet, nutty, salty, a little like toasted grain. What you are hunting for is the other thing. Sour, sharp, cheesy, a whiff like ammonia or old milk, coming from deep near the joint and nowhere else on the piece. That is bone sour, and it is the exact failure the whole cure exists to prevent. The spoilage bacteria around the joint won the race. The salt did not get there in time, or the weather was too warm, or nobody forced cure into the hock. And here is why this matters so much. A bone-sour ham can look perfect, beautiful rind, right weight loss, good smell everywhere your nose can reach. The failure hides in the one place it cannot go, which is why the tool exists. You go in at the shank joint, then the hip joint, and you use a clean spot on the steel each time so you are not chasing your own last reading. A child can learn it in 10 minutes, and children did. The failure mode is trusting your eyes over the trier. If the steel comes out sour, that piece does not go on the table and it does not get cooked into something to hide it. It is done. You will learn more from one lost ham you admitted to than 10 you talked yourself into. This week, if you have a long, thin metal skewer in a kitchen drawer, that is a trier. Take it out and know what it is for. Pattern break, and this is the one I have been walking you toward. Everything so far is in books. The 1917 Bulletin, extension publications you can download tonight, the Foxfire volumes. What comes next fell out of the record almost entirely, and it cost mountain families their hams in the spring after they had done every other thing correctly. It is not a temperature, and it is not a ratio. It is a war, and the enemy in it has a name. Piece 6. The smoke, and the thing that comes for a hanging ham in April. The smoke is quicker to explain than people expect, because smoke is not what preserves the meat. Salt did that. Smoke dries and darkens the surface, lays down compounds that discourage mold and insects, and gives the ham the flavor everybody thinks is the whole point. Out of the cure, the meat gets soaked briefly in cool water, roughly 2 minutes for every day it's spent in salt, in water no warmer than 70 degrees. That pulls the harsh crust off and evens the seasoning through the piece. Then it hangs and drips a few hours until the surface goes tacky to the back of your finger. That tacky skin takes smoke evenly, and if you rush it, the smoke sits in streaks. Then cold smoke, hardwood only. Hickory is the mountain standard, with oak, apple, and maple all good. Never pine, never anything resinous. A slow, smoldering fire in a pit or a bucket on the smokehouse floor. The meat hanging above it for days and not hours, often days on and days off across a week or two, kept well under 100 degrees. You are not cooking the ham, you are finishing it. And when the smoke is done, the ham goes on a nail and the calendar keeps moving. That is where the trouble starts. Because cold weather is over. It is April. The days are getting warm, and your whole year of protein is hanging on a nail in a wooden building. Here is what is coming for it. There is a small, shiny black fly, about 1/8 of an inch long, called the ham skipper. Entomologists call it Pyaphila casei, also known as the cheese skipper, and it is found across the United States. A single female lays in the neighborhood of 400 to 500 eggs, and she lays them on exactly one kind of thing: cured, dried, smoked meat and aged cheese. Salt does not stop her. Smoke slows her but does not stop her. The larvae hatch, and they avoid light, so they burrow. They tunnel into the interior of the ham and eat it out from the inside while the surface still looks like a cured ham. The name comes from what the larva does when you disturb it. It grabs its own hind end with its mouth hooks, bends into a hoop, and lets go, which launches it into the air the better part of a foot. If you ever heard an old-timer talk about skippers in the meat and thought it was a tall tale, it is not. It is documented in university entomology fact sheets, and larvae swallowed in infested food can cause a real intestinal problem. This is the enemy the wrap was invented for, and it is why every account of Appalachian meat keeping includes a step that sounds cosmetic and is not. After the smoke, the ham gets protected. Coat, then paper, then cloth. Black pepper rubbed heavy over the whole surface, worked hard into the shank and around the hock where the bone is exposed, because that exposed bone end is the doorway. Some families used borax, some whitewashed the outside. Then the ham gets wrapped snug in heavy paper, slid into a cloth sack, a ham bag of muslin, or an old flour sack, and tied off tight at the shank. Then it hangs high, off the wall, touching nothing, in a dark building with air moving through it. That bag is not decoration. It is a physical barrier between 400 eggs and your winter. And the failure mode is the one you would guess. One gap, a tear in the paper, a loose tie at the shank. She needs one opening, and by the time you see what happened, the inside of that ham is gone. Same lesson as the joint in piece 3, wearing a different coat. The danger is always at the seam, the bone end, the place you cannot see. So you protect what you cannot see first. Now, why did this step vanish while the salt ratios survived? Because it is the one piece with no equivalent in a modern kitchen. A refrigerator has no skipper flies in it. A freezer locker at 0 degrees has none either. The moment the meat went into a rented box in town, the whole art of guarding hanging meat for 6 months became useless overnight, and useless knowledge is the first thing a family stops teaching. It did not get suppressed, friend. It just had nowhere left to be used. No task this week on this one. Just know it. If you ever hang cured meat in an outbuilding, pepper, paper, cloth, Tie it tight, hang it high, check it every few weeks. Now the last piece, and it is the one that decides something bigger than whether you keep the meat. Piece 7, the finish. This is the piece the label on store-bought bacon quietly handles for you, and it is the one I will not let you leave here without. Salt slows spoilage bacteria. It does not sterilize meat. Cold slows everything. It does not sterilize meat. Smoke guards the surface and flavors it, and it does not sterilize meat either. And none of the three reliably deals with trichinella, the parasite historically associated with pork and with wild game, particularly bear and boar. It survives salt, it survives smoke, it survives cold storage. What deals with it is heat, held long enough, all the way to the center of the cut. So here is the rule, and this is the current federal number, not an old rule of thumb. Whole cuts of pork go to an internal temperature of 145 degrees Fahrenheit, measured with a thermometer in the thickest part, then rest 3 minutes before you cut. Ground pork goes to 160, and this applies to cured meat too, which is the part people miss. Country ham that spent 60 days in salt still gets cooked, bacon gets fried, salt pork gets simmered before it goes in the beans. The cure made the meat keep. Heat is what makes it safe to eat. 2 honest words, and then I will let you go. First, if you intend to cold smoke anything or hold cured meat at room temperature for a long stretch, you use a proper curing salt containing nitrite, measured on a scale, exactly per the label. Nitrite is not there for color. The Department of Agriculture's own food safety material states plainly that nitrite and salt together inhibit Clostridium botulinum, and botulism is not something a person experiments with. Too much nitrite is toxic, and too little leaves you unprotected. So this is the one ingredient where you follow the printed instruction to the gram, and you do not double it for luck. Second, if you cannot hold your curing space between 32 and 40 degrees, do not attempt a long dry cure. Do a short refrigerator cure and cook the meat through instead. There is no shame in it. A 20-pound ham in a garage that swings to 60 in the afternoon is a loss you cannot see coming. Salt slows, smoke finishes, cold holds, heat makes it safe, and a scale and a thermometer are what let a person in a modern house do what your great-grandmother did by instinct. So here it is whole and yours. Wait for the first hard cold. Chill the carcass overnight to the bone. Cut for storage, not for a display case. Weigh the meat. Weigh the salt. 3 rubbings, day 1, day 5, day 10, and cure forced into the hock on day 1, because that is where the race is lost. Wood, stone, glass, or food-grade plastic, never bare metal, held between 32 and 40 degrees. 7 days per inch, or 2.5 to 3 days a pound for a whole ham. Watch for a fifth of the weight to leave. Test at the joint with a trier, and trust your nose over your eyes. Soak, dry to tacky, cold smoke over hardwood, days and not hours. Pepper it, paper it, bag it, tie it at the shank, hang it high in the dark, and when it comes down off that nail, cook it through. That is the method, and it is what stood between an Appalachian family and a hungry march through a blight that killed 4 billion trees, through the Depression, through every hard winter this range has thrown. You do not have to do a whole hog to own this, friend. Do one thing. This Saturday, buy a 3-pound piece of pork belly and a kitchen scale. Weigh the belly in grams. Weigh out salt at 2.5% of that weight, so 75 grams of coarse salt for a 3,000-gram belly, and about half that in brown sugar. Rub it over every surface, including the edges. Put it in a bag or covered dish in your refrigerator, bottom shelf where it is coldest, and turn it once a day for 7 days. On day 7, rinse it well, pat it dry, and fry a slice all the way through. That is your first cure. 7 days, 1 belly, $20, no smokehouse required. Do it once, and you will know this in your hands instead of your head. Now tell me something down in the comments. Did your people have a salt box or a smokehouse still standing? Did they pepper the hams, or use borax, or whitewash, or a cloth bag somebody sewed by hand? Every hollow did this a little different, and the differences are the best part of the record. The one that shows up most in the comments is the one I build the next full video around. Your great-grandmother kept a year of meat alive with salt, wood smoke, a paper tag, and a cloth sack. Somebody just did not get the chance to hand that down to you. That is what I am here for. Next time, the lard crock. How a mountain family cooked sausage in December and took it out of a stone jar in July, still good. And why that method left every cookbook in this country inside 20 years. Keep the old ways, they kept us.